This whole situation with Reform UK and Rupert Lowe just doesn't make sense to me, particularly with Nigel Farage's recent statement referring to, well, for one, the 29th of February, which doesn't exist this year, and a few other things. But the police are now looking into it. So I'm going to give a few views and observations of what I've heard people say in this video a little bit later. But first of all, something that I find absolutely quite ridiculous to do with immigration once again. But first of all, if you do like my neutral, honest, and sometimes brutal approach to these things, what's going on in the news, with a sprinkling of the law so you understand what's going on, please do subscribe to the channel. I thank you all for doing that on recent videos. My channel is growing and it's down to you. It's thanks to you because I don't have a big media company telling me and pushing me what to publish. I'm saying what I think and what I think you all want to hear. Not what you want to hear, the things you want to hear about. You know what I mean. Anyway, please do subscribe. So let's first of all go to this bit here. This Abu Wadi chap that was, filmed himself coming across the channel and was pictured elsewhere with an assault rifle that arrived in the UK, causing mass panic, really, in some sense of the word, appears now have been arrested by immigration enforcement and been charged with knowingly entering the UK without leave. That raises the question, well, why not every other person that arrives in the UK legally? Why are they not charged? Well, we do know that once they are here, generally they apply for asylum and they go through the whole process. They are here for several years, etc. And then when we want to deport them, there's all sorts of excuses, such as their child doesn't like chicken nuggets in a foreign country. True story. You can find in my videos below. Utterly preposterous. But there we go. These are the stories that we hear. But make no mistake, it is an offence to enter the UK illegally without permission, whether that's against a deportation order or generally that you need permission. Under the Immigration Act of 1971, the standard offence under subsection B1, a person who requires leave to enter the UK under the Act, knowingly enters the UK without leave, commits an offence. So presumably he's been charged with a bog standard entering the UK without permission offence. And I suppose they've reacted in this situation, although it took them 5 days or so to do so, because of the serious nature of it. Because clearly the things that he's been saying and essentially bragging about and separately posted with assault rifles clearly then seems to suggest a serious risk to the UK. So they seem to have acted upon that one. However, then we come to a more generalised situation with what the Home Office call strict controls for certain migrants awaiting deportation. I had to respond to this on X, and I don't like being argumentative. I'm a barrister, so I argue for a living, but I don't like being argumentative for the sake of it, but I will call out something when I think it's utterly ridiculous. And with great respect to the Home Office and everyone working there and whoever wrote this post, this is ridiculous because I have to give you my pure views on this, and I think this is ridiculous. In fact, I said as much in the post. I'll read that to you in a minute. Their post, the Home Office post, says as follows: "We are imposing stricter controls for certain migrants who are awaiting deportation." Now, pause. Picking apart the wording here, being the lawyer, they're opposing stricter controls for certain migrants who are awaiting deportation. Now, unraveling that a little bit, this is a double whammy, really. First of all, they have to be awaiting deportation for any of this to apply. So they've been through the process, they've perhaps been refused asylum, or they've committed an offence and they're awaiting deportation, they've got a deportation order. Even then, there might be appeals processes which take years sometimes, as we've seen from recent cases, but they have to be awaiting deportation. So this has to be an individual with a deportation order. Secondly, only certain migrants who are waiting deportation. So on a casual reading, with great respect to you, if you as the viewer just read this with no legal knowledge or whatever, and you read this post, you think, they are applying these things to these migrants that are not supposed to be here that should be deported. Not quite true, because it only applies to those that are awaiting deportation and then only applies to certain migrants, and I don't know how they select those. Maybe the most dangerous or with criminal histories or whatever. I don't know. However, it goes on. New powers will allow the Home Secretary to enforce restrictions where individuals are considered a threat. Breaching restrictions could lead to arrest and 6 months in prison. Now, that's all very reassuring. However, these conditions are as follows. And I had to respond to this because, quite frankly, I think whilst it's better than nothing, I think they are just not likely to succeed, if I'm being rather cynical. It says electronic tagging, and it's got a picture of one of these. I don't know if this is the exact tag they use here, but we do know that the vast majority of these tags can be cut off in one way or another. And I suspect that if they don't want to be deported and they don't want to be tagged and they don't want to be tracked, I suspect that many of them will at least attempt to cut these off. Many of them might be successful. Although the tag might be more successful than I imagine it to be. I don't know. But I suspect not. I'm rather cynical like that. Secondly, curfews. So they entered the UK legally, presumably, and they've presumably been declined asylum, and presumably, according to the first bit of this post, they've been issued a deportation order, so they know they are going to be deported. Presumably they don't want to leave the UK, otherwise they wouldn't have to be forced to comply with a deportation order. They would just voluntarily leave, in which case it's not a forced return. But if all of that's true, why on earth would they commit to a curfew? Why would they comply with the curfew? I mean, some of them might, but I strongly suspect they won't. I mean, I think that we have enough difficulty with UK citizen criminals obeying curfews, let alone those that are not supposed to be here, don't want to leave, don't want to be deported, and will probably do everything they can to escape deportation, I presume. And thirdly, bans from certain areas. So they're going to ban them, what, from the town centre? They're going to ban them from other areas? Or what? I mean, the same difference goes with the curfews, really. Are they really going to obey a civil ban when they are facing deportation and probably don't want to be deported? Are they just going to comply with these banning orders? I suspect not. I would hope so, but I suspect not. And if all that wasn't cynical enough on my part, many of them won't speak English, and they won't be looking at these posts in the first place. And it is not in any way derogatory for me to say they may not speak English, because they might not speak English. And if they don't speak English and they don't see these posts, then they won't comply with them. And so I find this all a little bit odd. So my post here, somewhat cynical, was really? The tags can be cut off. And curfews and bans, are you serious? These people are in the UK legally, presumably they entered illegally, and probably don't wish to leave. Do you really expect them to obey these curfews and bans? I strongly suspect not. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, there's a story in the BBC of why people may not even report someone who may have hitched a ride unbeknownst to them on their vehicle and they come back to the UK. Because this is 10th of March. Yesterday, this was reported. A couple who discovered a migrant clinging to the back of their vehicle all the way from France has been fined £1,500. Now, it is a fine to unknowingly bring a migrant back with you. But presumably, they've decided that they want to report this chap for illegally entering the UK on the back of their vehicle. So it says here that Adrian and Joanne Fenton called the police when they found this person zipped inside the cover of a bike rack when they arrived home back in October. They then received a fine from the Home Office for failing to check that no clandestine entrant was concealed in their motorhome. I mean, let me be probably the bluntest I've been on this channel, but give me a break. These guys are coming in on dinghies across the channel, entering the UK by the thousands, over 2,000 this month since March, and they're all being processed, and yet this couple was fined £1,500 because they reported someone entering illegally, unbeknownst to them, on the back of their vehicle because they failed to check that someone was concealed. Now, I'm a lawyer that I'm obligated to encourage people to comply with the law, and the law says you might be fined if you unknowingly bring someone back because you didn't check. But this is ridiculous. Surely they should just be deporting this guy because he arrived illegally instead of punishing the people that have reported it. Because, not suggesting that anyone just ignores this in future, but what I suspect will now happen, anyone that reads this story, finds out about this story, or finds out about the fine for doing this, they probably won't report it because they won't want a £1,500 fine. So they'll probably let the guy go. I presume. I don't encourage people to do that. I encourage people to report it. But at the same time, can I really encourage someone to report something when they're going to be fined £1,500 for it? Well, this absolutely begs the question whether this law is fit for purpose. They've said now they're drafting an appeal, and the Home Office said the penalties were designed to target negligence rather than criminality. Well, I mean, is it really negligent? I mean, the whole test of negligence, owing a duty of care and so on. I mean, yes, you could check, etc. But what if you checked and then by the time you get back in the car, the guy sneaked in and you just didn't notice? That's not really negligent, is it? I don't know the full facts of the case, but I strongly suspect there are going to be cases like this where it's just not negligent. The guy snuck in without them knowing. So I think this is all a bit ridiculous, particularly when there's thousands of them coming in across the border illegally, entering the UK illegally. And it does, coming full circle, beg the question with this chap that they have reportedly now charged with entering the UK illegally, why can they not do that for everyone else that's entered the UK illegally? That really does raise the question. However, by the by, that's where we are. But now coming back to the situation with Nigel Farage statement against Rupert Lowe, because Rupert Lowe has made comments on this. Rather strange, conflicting information I've got here. Now, there's obviously no arrest by the police, so technically speaking, there are no live cases against Rupert Lowe, although the police are looking into it, so I'm not going to say too much, but what I will say objectively is comment on what the posts have been said so far. But first of all, and I'm not sure I buy this response from Reform in general, and I'll tell you why. But first, let's listen to what Nigel Farage said here. Listen to this.
What I do know for a fact is on the 29th of February, Mr. Lowe was informed that there was a parliamentary investigation into two separate allegations of bullying. We didn't know that at the time. Shortly after that, he gave that interview to the Daily Mail.
So that's all a bit odd, not least of which because there is no 29th of February. So it's unclear whether it means the 28th of February or the 1st of March or what, but there's no 29th of February 2025. But listen very carefully once more, and we'll try to unravel what he said. Listen again.
What I do know for a fact is on the 29th of February, Mr. Lowe was informed that there was a parliamentary investigation into two separate allegations of bullying. We didn't know that at the time. So he says he knows for a fact, regardless of whether it was 28th of February, 1st of March, whatever, regardless, he knows for a fact that Rupert Lowe was informed of this investigation and didn't know that at the time. And shortly after that, he gave the interview to the Daily Mail. Now, this is the interview where he's criticised Nigel Farage leadership. You know, rightly or wrongly, that's down to you whether you believe that or not, whether you agree with that or not. But I've just realised I've not put it on the screen, so I'll put this video on screen earlier and you can read this now. So Rupert Lowe responds to this and says as follows. I hope you can read enough of that. Let me move it across a bit more. Mr. Farage has openly lied about me on national television, Rupert says. He must urgently apologise, retract and correct the record. He says he knows for a fact that on the 29th of February, I was informed that there was a parliamentary investigation into allegations. He also goes on to say, shortly after that, I gave the interview to the Daily Mail. These are outright lies, Rupert says. The actual Daily Mail interview took place on the 25th of February, days before the publication. The interview itself was conducted before he received the first letter from Reform on the 28th of February. The letter was not from Parliament. So that doesn't make sense, because if Reform sent this letter, and all of this would be verifiable, if Reform sent that letter not from Parliament, which it suggests here, Nigel Farage just says he was informed that there was a parliamentary investigation into two separate allegations, but we didn't know that at the time. So if the letter came from Reform, they did know that at the time. Whereas if it came from Parliament, obviously there will be a letter from Parliament with the date on it. So that would be instantaneously verifiable one way or the other. Rupert Lowe goes on. The interview itself was conducted before. The letter was not from Parliament. To suggest I used the interview to deflect from the investigation is factually untrue. I've heard absolutely nothing from Parliament about any of this. Nigel Farage needs to correct the record, etc. Now,
thing here is, if these allegations were from December, the first question would be, why bring that forward now? Now, whilst the Met Police have said they are looking into these allegations, Rupert Lowe has now posted this letter, which 7 of his staff have put their name to, which I think tells quite a broad picture. That reads as follows. They say, as Rupert's entire parliamentary team, we feel obliged to take the unusual step of publishing this statement on the record. Rupert has no involvement in the organisation or drafting of this letter. Some of us have worked with Rupert for years, some for months, one for nearly 30 years. We want to state this unequivocally. Rupert is a good, decent and honest man. We've never seen any violent or vicious behaviour from him, ever. Nor have we heard any concerns from anyone about this before last Friday. It has never been discussed with any of us. He is courteous, loyal and unfailingly polite to us. A family man who cares deeply for his wife, 4 children and 1 young grandson. Rupert has been nothing but kind to all of us, going above and beyond to make us feel comfortable and welcomed in the office. To put simply, we all love working for him. We would all like to put our sincere appreciation to him on the record. Wider allegations of bullying are entirely untrue, they say. These were only issued after the 2 individuals in question admitted to separate serious offences and the disciplinary process had started against both of them. They are vexatious complaints, sadly submitted to cause as much damage as possible. We are all uncomfortable to see processes designed to protect staff weaponised in such an unpleasant and malicious fashion. Not just tarnishing Rupert's name unfairly, but also our office and subsequently us. This is not fair. Nobody from Reform has ever raised these concerns, or about Rupert, with any of us before this investigation. If they were so concerned about Rupert's behaviour, why were they not warned? Any allegations of any bullying against anyone are robustly denied by all of us. It is simply not true. We will all happily and openly talk to any official investigation. There's been no contact to any of us from relevant official parliamentary schemes or processes. And just pausing there for a moment, that is something that I felt that if there was intervention, contact, letter, etc. from any parliament office as such, that would be instantly verifiable and that would make the case, surely. We are a team, they say. Everybody is treated fairly and everybody's treated equally. We all get on well, have fun and work together to support Rupert. That is what we want to focus on, not this. Rupert is a good MP, a good boss and a good man, and he does not deserve what is happening to him. Rupert's team, and this is signed by Jonathan Wedon, forgive me if I mispronounce your names, Katerina Petrenko, Liam Porter, Alistair Harrison, Will Peacock, Jess Rogers and Jane Sheldrake, Private Secretary. Now, I can say Rupert Lowe also reached out to me. Now, I'm not doing this video blindly or biased or anything else. My experience of Rupert Lowe is somewhat limited to what I've read online and the brief chat that we've had when he came on my channel. He offered to come on my channel to support my channel because he sees what I'm trying to do to demystify the law, talk about news and current events, the way they affect people around the UK, try to break it down in a non-condescending, simple fashion for people that want to hear what's going on. And he's been supportive of my channel. With no agenda, he's asked for nothing in return. He just wanted to support my channel by coming on and essentially giving me an interview and coming on my channel to talk to you guys that obviously wanted to hear from Rupert Lowe. And my impression of him is exactly that. I think he's a gentleman. I think he's a kind and very hard-working, decent man. That is my opinion of Rupert Lowe. And my feeling generally on how this has all blown up on social media is not necessarily that this is going to kill the party or anything, but I think it has gone some way to affect the credibility of Reform. Because I think, as I said in my previous video, I think people saw Reform as a genuine third option than Labour or Conservative or the Uni Party, as some people often say. And I think this won't go away. I think people will feel somewhat sore about this for some time. But we will have to see what, if anything, comes out of this Met Police investigation, what, if anything, comes of any investigation. and what happens hereafter. Let me know your thoughts, your comments, support for Rupert if you wish in the comments box below. Please do support me by subscribing to the channel. That's free. There are certain paid options. There are, you can join as a member, you can leave the super thanks things, and all of that helps me continue day after day, tirelessly, when I fit the time in to do these videos for you for 5 years or so now, demystifying the law for you. And that is what Rupert saw that I was trying to do to help you here. I tell you all that so that I'm completely open, transparent, and anything that some people may perceive as bias. Well, I've told you everything. My only involvement with Rupert Lowe was him coming on the channel and supporting the channel that way. But my views of this situation are very much what they are. This strikes me genuinely as a very strange situation. If these allegations were from December or before, the Met Police say that they're now looking at the wider period, etc. But to me, something doesn't seem right about all of this, the timing and everything else, with Rupert Lowe's criticism of Nigel Farage, and then Nigel Farage coming back in an interview, criticizing what Rupert Lowe said, etc. And then suddenly all of this blows up. I think it's all a bit strange. Obviously, I can't draw any conclusions. There's not enough to draw any conclusions. I can only go on what each side have said. Reform have said they've got something to look into. But Rupert Lowe strenuously denied everything, and his entire team here of 7 people have put their name to what is an overwhelmingly positive character reference of Rupert Lowe from people that work with him day in and day out. Make of that what you wish. But this, presumably, if anything were to go any further, each of his staff would doubtless put their name to a witness statement if necessary. But as I say, we'll wait to see what this investigation turns up, and I very much look forward to seeing what happens next, because if all of this is all based on mistruths and it is misplaced allegations, then I think it's entirely unfair. But let me know what you think in the comments below. This is an open discussion. You're welcome and free to disagree with me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please do subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.